Sponsored by Rabbi Shlomi and Mirla Greenwald. This is a Sicha from Likutei Sichos, Chelek Beis, Parshas Bechukosai, Sicha Beis. And the topic of the Sicha is that in this week's Parsha we learned the pasuk by Meiser Behema where it says Lo Yevaker Bin Tov L'Ra, and we learned the teaching of Rashi on this pasuk. And there are 5 parts in the Sicha. The Rebbe will, number 1, explain what Rashi seems to be saying. Number 2, ask 5 questions on Rashi. Number 3, present the key, and that is we're going to present what Rashi is coming to explain. We're going to understand what it is that Rashi is coming to explain in this pasuk. Number 4, based on this, answer all 5 questions. And number 5, present the Inyanim Ufloim in Halacha and the Yenishal Torah in this Rashi. In the dinim of Meiser Behema, at the end of our parsha, on the pasuk of Lo Yevaker Bin Tov L'Ra, so we're talking over here about Meiser Behema, which in short is that from every 10 animals a person has to give 1 to Meiser. And the way it works, let's say a person has exactly 10 animals, he puts them into a pen, and then he lets them go out through a small door, and they pass under a stick that he's holding, and then the 10th animal the person hits with a stick that has a red dye on it, and that animal is Meiser. And what happens with Meiser is that if it doesn't have any mum, then it's brought up as a carbon, and the person himself gets to eat the animal. And there are certain rules about eating it that can be eaten for 2 days and 1 night, and only in Yerushalayim. So it says over there, Lo Yevaker Bin Tov L'Ra. So Rashi quotes Lo Yevaker V'Goymer, and he explains Lefishenemar because it says in Chumash Dvarim, in Parshas Re'eh, V'chol Mivchan Nidrechem, that we learn from there that a person should give his karbanos from the very best of what he has. So yachol yehi bayrer u'moitzias hayafa. So you think maybe over here the person chooses and takes out the best animal for the meiser behema. Talmud leimer, that's what the pasuk comes to teach us. Lo yevaker bin tov l'ra. A person should not be mevaker, shouldn't choose between the good and the bad. Rashi continues, bein tam bein bal mum. Whether it's a tam or a bal mum, chala olav kedusha, the kedusha will rest upon this animal. And then he explains further, v'lo sheyikrav bal mum, and we don't mean to say that this animal will be brought as a carbon if it's a bal mum, elo ye'achel b'teiras meiser, but rather that it's eaten as meiser, v'aser ligazes v'li ovid, and it's forbidden to shear the animal's wool, the wool from the animal, v'li ovid, and to work the animal. And we'll see how we're going to analyze all the different parts of this Rashi. So when we look at this Rashi, it looks like there are 2 parts to it. Rashi says first Lefisha Namar in Talmud Leimer, because it says V'chol Mivchar Nidrechem, we would think you're able to choose and take out the best one. Talmud Leimer Lo Yevaker Bin Tov L'Ra teaches us you don't choose the best animal. And then Rashi says that whether it's a Baal Mum, whether it's a Tam or a Baal Mum, it has a Kedusha, not that it's brought as a carbon, but just that it's eaten teres meiser and you can't cut off the wool and work with it. So it seems like there's 2 parts. First, what you would think, and the teaching from our pasuk, and then its continuation about a tam and a Baal Mum. So the beginning of this teaching of Rashi until where it says Talmud Leimer Lo Yevaker Bin Tov L'Ra is from the Teiras Kainim. The rest of the Rashi is from Gemara. However, it's known that it's not the way of Rashi to copy teachings of Razal unless it's necessary for the simple understanding of the psukim. And so that's what we have to see over here. What's Rashi, in what way is this necessary in the simple understanding of the psukim? So we can explain simply, the reason Rashi brings this teaching is because it's not understood why the pasuk needs to warn Lo Yevaker Bin Tov L'Ra. Why does the pasuk have to warn us of this? It already says V'chol Maser Boker V'tzayin Kol Asher Yaver Tachas Hashavet Ha'asiri Yiyeh Kodesh L'Hashem. That's the pasuk right before this one, which indicates that the person shouldn't select which one should be Meiser. It says Kol Asher Yaver Tachas Hashavet, anyone that goes under. Also, it doesn't say the one that he puts under, the one that goes under by itself. So why does the pasuk need to warn lo yavaker bin tevel ra? It already tells us to do it in such a way that the person is not choosing. That's the difficulty that Rashi has over here. And therefore Rashi explains, because it says that the karbonis you bring should be from the choicest of what you have. Therefore, in order to negate the thought that one should select the best animal over here, Rashi says, Talmud Leimer, the pasuk tells us, lo yavaker bin tevel ra. Person should not take the best one. But according to this explanation of Rashi, the end of Rashi isn't understood. From when Rashi says Bein Tam, Bein Balmum, that part's not understood because the end and the beginning of Rashi don't relate, as we'll see. So what we're going to lead now into are 5 questions. There's going to be 2 questions that relate specifically to this last point here, but according to this, the end of Rashi isn't understood because the end and the beginning don't relate to one another. There's going to be 2 questions that come from this, and then separately there will be 3 other questions on Rashi independent of this explanation that we just gave. And there are 5 questions here, and as we can see, the first 2 questions relate to the explanation we just gave, and the last 3 questions, they're questions directly on Rashi himself. And the first question is, and we're going to say it first, not the way it's presented in the Sicha, just to try to make it a little more clear. When we read Rashi, what Rashi is telling us is that since it says V'chol mivchan nidrechem, so you would think that a person is obligated to choose and take out the nicest, the best of the 10 animals as meiser. Talmud Leimer, the pasuk comes to tell us, lo yavaker, that a person should not do this. He should let the animals go out as they go out. However, the question is over here, if we didn't have lo yavaker, what would we think? That a person is supposed to choose the best one. But what if they didn't choose the best one? They didn't listen to this. We would just think they didn't listen. They didn't do what they should do. But the animal's still going to be meiser. They just didn't do it the right way. We wouldn't think that it's a requirement to the extent that if the person didn't fulfill taking the best, then it's not meiser. We would say it is meiser, but the person didn't do it in the exact way they were told to do it, which was to take the best. They didn't take the best. So whatever it came out, it wasn't the way they should have done it, but it will be meiser. But the way Rashi writes it is in such a way that's implied that our pasuk is teaching us that it becomes meiser. And otherwise we wouldn't know. Because what does Rashi say? Talmud Leimer, the pasuk tells us, lo yavaker. You shouldn't choose. And that bein tam and bein balmum, chala olav kudusha, it will become kodesh. As if otherwise we wouldn't know it comes kodesh. Why would we ever say that? From v'chol midvar nidrechem, it shouldn't lead us to say that if the person doesn't take the best one, it's not Kaddish. It would just lead us to say that that's the way it should be done. But if the person didn't do it that way, of course it'll be Kaddish. It just the person didn't do it in the best possible way, in the right way. But the animal is Kaddish. From where does Rashi take the understanding? It seems like he takes this understanding that from V'chol mivchan nidrechem alone, we would think it doesn't have Kedusha. And Talmud Leimer lo yavaker teaches us, don't choose and it will have Kedusha, even if it's whether it's a tam or a balmum. The second question is, Rashi starts by talking about a yafa, which means a good animal, a shmeina, a healthy animal, and then he ends with talking about a tam, which just relates to it not having any blemish, any mum. And over here we're missing a little piece that's not written out over here. When we look at the original thought in Rashi, it says v'chol mivchan nidrechem. So yachal yehi borer moitzes hayafa. You think you take out the best. Over here we're obviously not talking about a balmum because we're talking about bringing a carbon. A carbon can't be brought from a balmum. So obviously we're talking about 2 options that are not a balmum. One of them is that the animal is a yafa, a nice animal, a good animal, or you could say a shmeina, a healthy animal. And the other one is an animal that's a raw. It's a bad animal. It's a kusha. It's a weak animal. So those are the 2 options. So clearly that's what the beginning of Rashi is talking about. Yafa versus ra'a, a good animal, a healthy animal, a shmeina, versus a bad animal, an animal that's not so healthy, or what we call a chusha. And so this leads to two questions. Number one, why does Rashi end by discussing a tam and a balmum? We're not talking about a tam and a balmum. We're talking about a yafa and a ra'ah, or a shmeina and a chusha. We're talking about whether it's a healthy, strong, good animal, or it's a weak and not such a good animal, a bad animal. So why does Rashi switch to tam and balmum? And number two, the second question is, how do we know that even by a balmum, it's chala olav gdusha? If the pasuk's not talking about a balmum, it's talking about an animal that does not have a mum. It's just distinguishing whether it's a good animal or a bad animal, whether it's a healthy and strong animal or it's an unhealthy and weak animal. So all we know is that animals that could be brought as a carbon, just one is healthy, one is not as healthy, that by them there's kedusha. But how do we know that also if the animal's a balmum, that the kedusha will take effect on it? The third question is, Rashi quotes from the pasuk lo yevaker v'goymer. So the only words he quotes from the pasuk are lo yevaker. The other words, the next words, bein tev l'ra, he only hints to with v'goymer. But then in his teaching, he writes out fully the whole pasuk. He says lo yevaker bein tev l'ra. Rashi says Talmud loimer. The pasuk teaches us. He doesn't say lo yevaker v'goymer. He says lo yevaker bein tev l'ra. It would make more sense that when he quotes from the pasuk, he should quote every part that's relevant. And over here we find the reverse. When Rashi quotes from the pasuk, he only quotes lo yevaker, and then he says v'goymer. And then when he brings the pasuk, he says, but that's what the pasuk tells us, lo yevaker ben tev l'ra. So what's the explanation for this? The fourth question is, we have to understand the end of the words of Rashi. Rashi says that it's bein tam, bein balmum, chala olav gdusha, and then he explains, v'lo sheyakriv balmum. And so the question is that these words, v'lo sheyakriv balmum, seem to be extra, because it already says in the Torah beforehand, clearly, that kol asher boimum lo yisakrivu, that if it has a mum, you can't bring it as a carbon. So why does Rashi have to tell this to us? It's obvious. It seems like these words are extra. It would seem that Rashi should just say chala olav gdusha, and then tell us yeyachal b'teres meiser v'asar ligazes v'liyavid. Of course, it's not brought as a carbon. And the fifth question is, from where does Rashi know in Pshutei Shel Mikra both details that this animal that's a balmum and is meiser, it's both ye'achal b'teres meiser, it should be eaten b'teres meiser, and also v'asar ligazes v'le'avid. You can't take off the wool, you can't shear the wool and do any work with it. From where does Rashi know both of these details in Pshutei Shel Mikra? Now we're going to move on to the key of the Sicha. And the key of the Sicha over here is to understand why Rashi is saying this teaching at all. What is it that's really bothering Rashi over here that he's coming to explain? And once we understand that, then everything else will fall into place and all the questions will be answered. So the explanation of all of this is as follows. The word yevaker in our pasuk, when it says lo yevaker ben tev l'ra, can be explained in two ways. It can either mean birur, to choose, and in our case it would be to choose and remove one animal from the 10 in the group. So the person would choose, let's say, the best animal, or possibly the worst animal. Or it can mean bikairas, which means to examine, and in our case it would mean to examine the whole group. What does that mean practically? Meaning that all 10 animals in the group should be examined, and the person will do to them as he wants to do to them. So, for example, simply what the person would do is place a mum in each animal. Now, according to halacha, it's mutter for a person to examine his group of animals and make a mum in each one, and then automatically the 10th one will have a mum. And so it's understood that also the reverse, which is to make sure that all the animals are yafis, that the person will make sure that all the animals in this group of animals are healthy and strong animals, is allowed, and then automatically the 10th one will be a yafa, will be a shmeina. Now, so we have these two options, and we spoke a little bit about bikeris. Now, the simple understanding of the psukim of lo yevaker being tev l'ra, so it would mean birur. That's what it means simply. That person shouldn't choose the bein tov, that it should be a good one. However, it already says, like we said earlier, Koil asher yaver tachas hashevet, hasiri kodesh, which indicates that a person may not choose one animal from among the others in the group, because it says Kol asher yaver, whatever goes under, and it goes under by itself, not that the person does it. And therefore, it makes more sense, based on this, that when it says Lo Yavaker Bein Tev L'Ra, it means Bikairis. And it's saying that the person shouldn't make all the animals in the group to be the same, whether they should all be with a mum, or whether they should all be healthy. The pasuk is telling a person not to do this. This is what we would think without Rashi. And now we'll understand why there is this teaching of Rashi, and based on that, all the questions will be answered, as we'll see that this is now going to lead into the answer. So now we're going to begin with the main point of the answer, which is really simply to understand what's the main thing Rashi is coming here for. And we're also going to answer part of question 3, which was how come at the beginning Rashi quotes from the pasuk only Lo Yavaker, then he says V'gomer, and then later Rashi says Lo Yavaker bin Tev L'Ra. He also says the end. He says Talmud Loimar Lo Yavaker bin Tev L'Ra. We're only going to answer part of that third question. We're going to answer why in the quote from the pasuk Rashi only quotes the words Lo Yavaker, and bin Tev L'Ra he only hints to with V'gomer. So that's what we set up to now. Is what we would think is that Lo Yavaker over here must mean B'kairis, that a person shouldn't arrange that all the animals in the group are the same. However, Rashi is coming to teach that Lo Yavaker means birur. It actually means not to choose. And that's why Rashi only quotes the words Lo Yavaker, because the main thing he's coming to explain, that's the main thing he's coming to explain, which is what are the meaning of these words. So, in other words, when we're reading the pasuk, we're thinking, based on our understanding, Lo Yavaker must mean Bikairis. So Rashi quotes the words Lo Yavaker because he says, I want to tell you these words don't mean Bikairis. It doesn't mean to examine the animals to make sure they're all the same. It means not to choose. That's why he quotes just the words Lo Yavaker. So why does he also write V'gomer? And it's just that the proof for his explanation is from the next words, Bein Tev L'Ra. That's the proof for what Lo Yavaker means. And therefore he hints to them with V'gomer. So what's the explanation here? Why does Rashi say Lo Yavaker means to choose? And it's learned from the words Bein Tev L'Ra. Beforehand, when the Torah teaches about separating an animal for a carbon, when a person separates an animal for a carbon, so it says Lo Yachlifenu v'lo yamar oisei tov b'ra eira b'tov. A person shouldn't exchange it, he shouldn't swap it, not tov b'ra and not ra b'tov. And according to this in our pasuk, if we explain that Lo Yavaker bin Tev L'Ra means Bikairis, a person shouldn't examine the animals and make sure that they're all the same, then why does it only say Lo Yavaker bin Tev L'Ra? That a person shouldn't make sure that they're all toiv. It should add, like beforehand, also bein ra l'toiv. Because just like a person may not make all the animals yafis, he can't do bein toiv l'ra to make sure they're all toiv. A person may also not make all the animals ra'is, bein ra l'toiv. So it should have said both ways. And since it only says Lo Yavaker bein toiv l'ra, so this proves that it means birur, that it's telling a person not to choose a good animal from among all the others. And if you ask, why would we say that it's mutter to choose and remove the yafeh? Why would a person say that that's permitted? We said the pasuk already indicates it should be done automatically. Kol asher yaver tachas hashevet, whatever goes under, that's the one. And it shouldn't be done by the person. So therefore Rashi explains, since it says that your karbanos should be from the choicest of what you have. So you'd think person should choose and take out the nicest one, the best one. Talmud Loimar, the pasuk tells us, Lo Yavaker, you should not. And that's how you're supposed to read it. Rashi doesn't mean to say Talmud Loimar Lo Yavaker Bein Toiv L'Ra. Just Talmud Loimar Lo Yavaker, don't choose. We'll see about Bein Toiv L'Ra in a moment. And therefore the pasuk doesn't add over here bein ra l'toiv. It only says bein toiv l'ra, because since it already says kol asher yaver tachas hashevet asiriyah kodesh l'Hashem, which, as we explained, means that a person shouldn't do anything. It's whichever one goes under. So there's no place to say that one may choose which animal to take out, because it says whichever one goes, that's the one. Why would a person make a mistake here? If it's only mistake a person can make is that he could take the best one out, because we have the pasuk v'chol mivchan idreichem, that it should be the choicest. So a person would never think that they could choose which animal to take out if not for the pasuk of v'chol mivchan idreichem, which only talks about choosing the yafa, the best one. So that's the only thing that needs to be addressed. That although it says the animal should be from the choicest, comes the pasuk and says lo yevaker. A person should not choose being toiv l'ra, to take the good one from the bad ones. That's the only thing that needs to be addressed. But being ra l'toiv, that a person shouldn't take the bad one out, of course the person can't take the bad one out. The pasuk says that it should be whichever one goes out. The only possibility a person would still think is maybe take the best one out, because we have a different pasuk. That's why the pasuk comes and tells us here, lo yevaker, don't do that. Don't take the best one out. Whichever one comes out, that should be the one that's meiser. Now we're going to move on to answering questions 1, 2, and part of 3 that wasn't still fully answered. So question 1 was, why do we need to learn from this pasuk that it will have kedusha, as if otherwise we would think that if the person didn't choose the best, it won't have kedusha, that it's liikuva, it must be the best, and otherwise if a person didn't listen, it's not just that they didn't listen, but the animal wouldn't have kedusha. So therefore Rashi has to tell us that bein tam, bein balmum, chala olav kedusha. What's the reason we would ever think otherwise? The second question was, Rashi starts off talking about a good animal as in a healthy, strong shmena, as opposed to a weak, unhealthy chusha, and then he at the end talks about a tam and a muad. And then the third question that still has to be addressed here is, how come in Rashi itself he says lo yevaker, and he also quotes from the pasuk bein toiv l'ra. So we're going to answer all of those together. However, there's a difficulty over here. Rashi said his main explanation, which is that it means to choose. And why do we need to be told not to choose? Because you can make a mistake from the pasuk of v'chol mivchan idreichem. However, there's still a difficulty. Since lo yevaker bein toiv l'ra is only coming to negate v'chol mivchan idreichem, not to say to choose the best one, lo yevaker, you shouldn't choose, then it would have been enough to write lo yevaker, just write lo yevaker, and nothing more. There's no need to add bein toiv l'ra, because also then we would be forced to say it's teaching not to choose the yafa, because there's no other thought we would have. Of course you can't choose the ra, because it says just whichever one comes out. The only thing you can make a mistake and say, choose the yafa, because it says v'chol mivchan idreichem. So also then we would be forced to say it's teaching not to choose the yafa. And so the words bein toiv l'ra are extra. And from this Rashi proves that bein toiv l'ra is adding another matter. So it's almost like Rashi is not saying it's almost like Rashi is saying a second teaching here. Rashi is not saying Talmud loymar lo yevaker bein toiv l'ra. He's saying Talmud loymar lo yevaker. Then Rashi is starting a new thing. Bein toiv l'ra, what does that teach us? It's teaching us something else, because there's no need for those words. And that's what he's teaching us is another matter, that of tam and balmum. So it's a whole new teaching. So you can't ask, we would think that there's no kedusha. This is a whole new teaching. Rashi is telling us the words bein toiv l'ra. Let me tell you what they teach you. It's not related to the first part of Rashi. We thought it's related. So we thought Rashi is continuing, and then we had a question. Why does he start with healthy versus unhealthy animal, and then he moves to a tam and balmum? If it's one continuation, that's a question. And if it's one continuation, then you have a question. How come Rashi quotes these extra words from the pasuk, which he doesn't quote at the beginning? And if it's one explanation, you have a question at the beginning. He says v'chol mivchan idreichem. So this pasuk teaches us, no, you don't have to, and you're not allowed to choose, and it'll have kedusha. We're learning it'll have kedusha. You would think it doesn't have kedusha. That's not what's happening here. It's a whole new teaching. The first teaching is done with. Rashi tells us lo yevaker, because it says v'chol mivchan idreichem. You think to pick the best one. Talmud loymar lo yevaker, don't pick the best one. That part of Rashi is complete. It's finished. We're done with it. Now Rashi is coming to address something else. He's telling us, since the words bein toiv l'ra, seem to be extra, what do we learn from them? We learn from them about a tam and a balmum, that whether an animal is a tam or a balmum, it has kedusha. It's nothing to do with the first part of Rashi. And then he says, and as we'll see the rest of Rashi, how it's spoken about, that not that it's brought as a carbon, but that you have to eat a b'teres meiser, and you can't take off the wool, and you can't do work with it. So this answers to us the questions about the second part of Rashi, that it's a whole new Rashi, and as a result, it's not a question, how does Rashi switch? It's a whole new teaching. And so from this, Rashi proves that Bein Tov L'Ra is adding another matter, because it's extra, the matter of Tam and Balmum. And the Pasuk is coming to teach us Bein Tam, Bein Balmum, Chol Olav Gdusha. When the Pasuk says Bein Tov L'Ra, it's teaching about a whole other thing, that whether an animal is a Tam or a Balmum, it has Gdusha. And even though a Balmum may not be brought on the Mizbeach, and the Kedusha of Meiser is to be brought on the Mizbeach, nevertheless, we learn from Bein Tov L'Ra that also a Balmum has Kedusha. So that's the second teaching of Rashi, that Bein Tov L'Ra teaches us Bein Tam and Bein Balmum Chala Olav Kedusha. And the Chiddush is that even though a Balmum can't be brought on the Mizbeach, and the Kedusha of Meiser is primarily about being brought on the Mizbeach, nevertheless, Bein Tov L'Ra teaches us that a Balmum has Kedusha. Now we're going to move on to answer questions 4 and 5. And all of this is under the understanding that we have a whole new teaching of Rashi here, that he's telling us that the words Bein Tov L'Ra teach us that Bein Tam, Bein Balmum, Chala Olav Gdusha. Our questions 4 and 5 were, why does Rashi say V'leish Yaakov Balmum? Of course it's not going to be brought as a carbon. We already know that. We learned that clearly. And also, how does Rashi know that it's in two things? First of all, that it's eaten b'teres meiser, and also that you can't take off the wool or do work with the animal. So we're going to continue to that now. And it's just that its kedusha is Leish Yaakov Balmum Ela Ye'achal b'teres meiser v'oser ligazes v'le'ovid. It's not brought on the Mizbeach because it is a balmum, but rather it's eaten b'teres meiser, and you can't take off the wool to do work with it. What is Rashi saying here? An explanation for this is as follows. In the kedusha of the 10th animal, Bein Tam, Bein Balmum, in this teaching of Rashi, now it says about meiser Yiyeh Kodesh. And also in the previous pasuk of meiser, it says Hasiri Yiyeh Kodesh LaHashem. The word Yiyeh implies, the word Yiyeh means that in addition to the kedusha that it gets, that's chol on it, there also has to be an action of kedusha. Yiyeh kodesh. There's a action of kedusha associated with it. It's not just some kedusha that rests on it, that takes effect on it, but there's an action aspect to it. And like Rashi says on Yiyeh kodesh in the previous pasuk, he says that there's an action related to it, that likrav lamizbeach, that it should be brought to mizbeach, domoy ve'emurav, its blood, and the different parts of the animal, va'abasar nechal abaylam, and the meat is eaten by the owners. So you see that there's an action related to the kedusha of meiser, and this is a chiyuv action of kedusha, something active that's done, that is placed on the person to do something from when the animal got its kedusha. That means right when the kedusha rests on the animal, it's associated with a certain action that the person is obligated to do. However, regarding a balmum, it's not understood. How can we say by it Yiyeh Kodesh? Because it says Yiyeh Kodesh by all the things in the pasuk, and Bein Tov L'Ra refers to Bein Tam and Bein Balmum. So what's the Yiyeh Kodesh there? Meaning, how can we do with it a chiyuv action of kedusha if it's not brought on the mizbeach? And therefore Rashi adds V'leish Yaakov Balmum. That's what Rashi is saying. V'leish Yaakov Balmum. It's not coming to teach us that you can't bring a balmum. Of course you can't. He's coming to now answer this question. It says Yiyeh, what's the action? So he explains V'leish Yaakov Balmum, which is the main chiyuv action of kedusha. That's the main thing whenever we talk about kedusha by a meiser animal. But rather, Ela Ye'achal b'teres meiser, that this is also a chiyuv action of kedusha, to eat it b'teres meiser, as we'll see later what that means. But there's a positive aspect to it. To eat it b'teres meiser. So this answered our question. Why does Rashi say v'lo yishikar balmum? It's not that he's telling us a chiddush. It's not brought as a balmum. Of course, it can't be brought as a balmum. But he's coming to address a question here. It says ziyah. There's an action, a chiyuv action that must be associated with it. What is it? So Rashi tells us the main one, which is that it should be brought as a carbon. Obviously, it's not what it means. So he's leading into saying, so what is it? Instead, it's eaten b'teres meiser. However, this is not enough because it's only possible to eat it b'teres meiser after shchita, and not right when it gets its kedusha. And the shchita is not part of the mitzvah, so the mitzvah only takes effect after shchita. And we said it has to be immediately, right when it gets the kedusha, when the kedusha is chol on it. So therefore, Rashi adds aser ligazis v'le ovid, that you can't take off the wool and you can't do work with it, because one has to be careful with this kedusha right when it gets its kedusha. From that moment on, person can't take off the wool and can't do work with the animal. However, so why doesn't Rashi just say that? Why does he also say that? And he also puts it as number 2. However, it's understood that this isn't enough because it's not a chiyuv action of kedusha. It's not something positive like bringing it as a carbon, eating it b'teres meiser. Those are positive things, but rather just a shlila, something you shouldn't do. So it takes effect immediately. The kedusha is here, and it affects your actions, what you shouldn't do. But there's no positive chiyuv action associated with it. It's just a shlila, and therefore the first thing is that Rashi says ye'achal b'teres meiser, a positive action. But because of what it's lacking, that it's not immediate, it's only after the shchita. Therefore Rashi adds another thing which happens right away, although it's not positive, but it happens right away, that the person cannot take off the wool and can't do work with it. Now we're going to move on to the Inyanim Mufloim and Halacha in Rashi, and then to the Yenushal Torah in Rashi. So from the Inyanim Mufloim and Halacha in Rashi, we still have to understand what does this Kedusha of a Baal Mum that we say about it, the Ochel B'teres Meiser, it should be eaten B'teres Meiser. What does that mean? That it should be eaten B'teres Meiser? That it should be Nechol L'shnei Yomim V'layla Echad, that it's only eaten for 2 days and 1 night, is only by a tam. That was brought as a carbon and not a balmum. That it's nechol b'chol ha'ir of Yerushalayim only is also only by a tam that was brought as a carbon and not a balmum. And we can't say it's that it's not allowed to be sold in a butcher's market, like it says in the Mishnah. And it can't be weighed by the litra, which is the way regular meat is treated. It's sold in a butcher's market and it's weighed this way, because it's only something of shlila. It's a negative thing. So it's not a chiyuv, and also it's not about eating it. It's about selling it and weighing it. And from Rashi we see that it's something of chiyuv, not shlila, and it's something of eating. So that's not good enough. Besides for the fact that some say that this whole thing is only midrabanan, not minatera, that he can't sell it in a butcher's market and weigh it by the litra. So what is this thing of ye'achal b'teres meiser? So we must say that it means literally exactly what it sounds like, that the eating has to be b'teres meiser, that the person has to have in mind the kavana that they're eating meiser. And the Rabbi points out that this is seemingly a big chiddush that's not found anywhere else. This is the Inyanim Mufloim and Halacha and Rashi, that it comes out that a person, when he eats the meiser, that's a Baal Mum, that the person has to have in mind, has to have kavana that they're eating meiser. From Yeno Shal Torah and Rashi, it's explained in Chassidus that in the zikuch of physical things, the refinement of physical things, and their elevation to kedusha, there are a number of levels. There are physical things that were just prepared to be used for a mitzvah, but a mitzvah was not yet done with them. Like, for example, when a person prepares wool for tzitzis and klaf for tefillin, and so on. And then higher than this is after a mitzvah was done with the item, that the zikuch that's done in them while doing the mitzvah, which is the highest zikuch, to do a mitzvah with something, remains in them even afterwards. And within this itself, there's a distinction. There is the higher level of tashmishe kedusha, something which is actually a holy object, like tefillin, a sefer Torah, a mezuzah, And then there's tashmishay mitzvah, which, as the Gemara says in Megillah, is not as great. Like if a person does a mitzvah with an object, like a person uses a lulav for a mitzvah, it's not a davar shebekdusha, it's not a holy item, it's a lulav. But a person did a mitzvah with it. So you have the lower level is that it was prepared, and then you have the higher level that a mitzvah was done with it, and within that itself you have the lower level that it was used to do a mitzvah, and the higher level that it's tashmish kedusha. And then there's even more is by something physical, another level. This is like a lower level. Is by something physical that the mitzvah isn't done with the object itself, but that a mitzvah is done through them. Not like a lulav that you do a mitzvah with a lulav, but you use the object to do a mitzvah through it. Like money used to give tzedakah, where we can't compare the money from the way it was before to after a mitzvah was done with it. And even more, the amazing impact that the Alter Rebbe talks about in Tanya, that the money elevates all the other money that it was taken from. And according to that, it would come out to say that the 10th animal uplifts all the other 9. And the Rebbe says that we still have to look into a dayan sarchiyun about that. So we have over here all these different levels of making an impact on physical things related to a mitzvah. Whether it's that a mitzvah wasn't done with it but through it, or that it's being prepared to do a mitzvah with it, and then a mitzvah is already done, and whether a mitzvah is done with it, or it's even a davar shebekdusha as a result of the mitzvah, like by a sefer Torah, tefillin, and a mezuzah. And the reason for this, that we see this zikuch of physical things and their elevation to kedusha in all these different ways, is because this is the chiddush of Matan Torah. Matan Torah brought about that hel yonim yerdu latachtenim vatachtenim yalu lal yonim, that the kedusha could come down here and the world down here could be elevated to kedusha. That through doing a mitzvah, the kedusha actually has an impact on the physical things. And this is hinted to in Rashi, that not only by a tam is there a positive kedusha, that it's brought on the mizbeach, where then you see a positive aspect of kedusha in the thing, but rather even a bal mum. It's not just that osir ligazes v'le'avid, that you can't take off the wool and do work with it, which is like tashmishi mitzvah, something which a mitzvah was done with, like your lulav, that you can't mistreat it, but you don't really see the kedusha on it. It's even more, but also ye'achal b'teres meiser, which is a positive thing, similar to like a davar shebekdusha, higher than the tashmishi mitzvah. You did a mitzvah with it, so it's holy, but you don't see anything palpable. Al pi halacha could be thrown in the garbage. That would be like osir ligazes v'le'avid. You can't treat it that way because a mitzvah was done with it, but it doesn't really have such a great kedusha in it. When we say also Ya'achal B'teres Meiser, which is something which is active, that's a revealed aspect of Kedusha. That's the Yenishal Torah and Rashi, that we're talking about a palpable Kedusha, not just a Kedusha that's out of respect and not to mistreat something, but it's an active and chiyuv thing, that there's a palpable living Kedusha in the thing, like we said, that comes from Matan Torah, when the Kedusha could come into the world and the world could be elevated to Kedusha. And we conclude with another matter in the Yenishal Torah and our Rashi. It's known in regards to Sur Meira and Asay Toiv. Sur Meira, going away from doing Averis, and Asay Toiv, doing mitzvahs, that the main Hamshachas Kedushas Alakus, the main bringing down of Alakus into the world is through Asay Toiv. And it's just that in order to draw down Alakus through the Asay Toiv, you first need Sur Meira, like the famous mashal, when a king's coming somewhere, first you have to remove all the dirt, and then you can bring in the nice furniture. So it's a prerequisite. It's something that has to be there beforehand. But the main Amshachas Elikus is through the Asay Toiv. And this is what Rashi hints to in the order of things. He says, Ya'achal b'teres meiser v'osir ligazes v'le'avid. First he explains the main purpose of the Aveda, which is Ya'achal b'teres meiser, which is something chiyuv. It's the Asay Toiv. It's something active, something that you do. And afterwards he talks about the Sur Meira, which is just an introduction and secondary to the Amshachas Elikus, meaning that even though the actual order is that first one must be careful with Sur Meira, and afterwards is Asay Toiv, but in Rashi, which is Yenishal Torah. Yenishal Torah means where the pnimius of each thing is emphasized. So Rashi, he emphasizes the main part of the Avodah, which is to make a dira lo yizbarach b'tachteinim. Through Asay Taiv, the Amshachas, Elikus, which brings about the dira b'tachteinim. You could also say, on a simple level, that Rashi says the vadai before the suffix. That's a vadai that you have to eat it. That person is obligated to do this, to eat it v'teres ma'aseh. Whereas to take off the wool or not to do work with it is only a suffix if it'll come up that it has wool, that a person will have work. So he's being told, don't take off the wool, don't do the work. So that's on a simple level. Now, even though Sur Mirah is only an introduction and preparation to Amshachas Alakus through Asay Taiv, so it's secondary, and Rashi mentions it second, but there's something we could see interesting about the Sur Mirah, that nevertheless a person has to be careful by Sur Mirah in all the details, and it's in two matters, both in the main things, which is like working with the animal, the actual animal itself, and also there's things that seem to be secondary, which is like the wool. The wool is like here, it's secondary to the animal. So even though we're saying the main thing is Asay Tov, and Rashi communicates that, but in the Sur Mirah, he tells us two things. Rashi is telling us about the extent that a person has to be careful with the Sur Mirah, both in the main things, which is like working the animal itself, and also the things that seem to be secondary, which is like the wool. And through being careful in the Sur Mirah, in all details, then the Amshachas Elikus will be done properly through the Asay Tov, which we said that's what brings about to make a Dira Lo Yizbarach B'Tachteinim.